the fam, catching up with my sister and my niece. You know how that be sometimes. But today, we are going to be talking about lust. All of us struggle with it. The majority of us struggle with it. I'm going to say it like that because I can't spare everybody, you know. So I'm by myself now, so we just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Da-da. Let me adjust that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. All right. Lust. What is the definition of lust? The Bible doesn't explicitly define it. So, using Webster, it is intense or unbridled sexual desire or a powerful craving for something. The most prominent and God-fearing people have fallen to this temptation, but God is merciful to forgive those who repent and confess our sin. 1 John 1:9. John also lists the type of lust that we encounter in 1 John 2:16. I'm going to go to that so we can read through that really quickly. 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. And it says, "For all that is in the world, sensual lust, enticement for the eyes," it says lust of the eyes, "and the pretentious life," the pride of life, "is not from the Father, but is from the world." So lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life are not from the Father of the world. So let's dive into the scriptures to see what we can learn from those before us who have fallen into lust, and if there are equal ways that we can avoid falling ourselves. So first, we're going to go to Genesis chapter 39. And if you all aren't familiar, this is the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. So Genesis chapter 39, and we're going to read verses 6 through 12. And it says, "Having left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, he being the Pharaoh, Potiphar, he gave no thought with Joseph there to anything but the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. After a time, his master's wife looked at him with longing and said, 'Lie with me.' But he refused and said to his master's wife, 'Look, as long as I am here, my master does not give a thought to anything in the house, but he has entrusted me all he owns. He has no more authority in this house than I do. He has withheld from me nothing but you, since you are his wife. How then could I do this great wrong and sin against God?' Although she spoke to him day after day, he would not agree to lie with her or even be near her. One such day, when Joseph came into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were then in the house, she laid hold of him by his cloak, saying, 'Lie with me.' But leaving the cloak in her hand, he escaped and ran outside." And then we're going to skip to 2 Timothy 2:22, just to get the actual practical implications of this story. So 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. Almost there. All right. Just like what Joseph did, it says, "So turn from youthful desires and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord with purity of heart." It says, turn from useful desires, but in other translations, it says free from lust, flee from lust. So just like what Joseph did, even though it didn't turn out super well for him in the end, I mean, God uses, everything for those who serve him, but he ended up going to jail because of this, because she lied on him. But it says flee from lust. And this is a literal recommendation to avoid lust, whether it's physical or mental. Run from promiscuous men and women, and run from lustful thoughts. Running mentally is practiced by occupying your body with strenuous activity that forces you to focus differently. Things that you like to be involved in, like drawing or maybe putting a puzzle together or going out to exercise, like Bryce Crawford says he does, but he's married now, which I'm so happy to hear. So now we're going to go to another story. It is 1 Samuel chapter 11. And this is kind of a long one. Hey, Elliot Miller, how you doing, fam? 1 Samuel. And if you're all not familiar with this story, it's going to be the story of David and Bathsheba. 1 Samuel chapter 11. I'm alive, can't complain. Had a good day at work and then saw my sister afterwards, so it's been a good day so far. So we're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 11, and I'm going to go 1 through 17. Kind of long, but all of it matters. So about a month later, Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh-Gilead. All the people of Jabesh begged Nahash, make a treaty with us and we will serve you. 2 Samuel, 1 Samuel, right? I had this together before I left. I think it's 2 Samuel. Yeah, it's 2 Samuel, my bad. 2 Samuel 11. Appreciate that, fam. Stick with me. At the turn of the year, the time when kings go to war, David sent out Joab along with his officers and all Israel, and they laid waste the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. David himself remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David rose from his bed and strode out on the roof of the king's house. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. She was very beautiful. David sent people to inquire about the woman and was told, she is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam and wife of Uriah the Hittite, Joab's armor bearer. Then David sent messengers and took her. When he came to him, he took her to bed, at a time when she was just purified after her period. And she returned to her house, but the woman had become pregnant. She sent a message to inform David, I am pregnant. So David sent a message to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. Joab sent Uriah to David. And when he came, David asked him how Joab was, how the army was, and how war was going. And Uriah answered that all was well. David then said to Uriah, go down to your house and bathe your feet. Uriah left the king's house, and a portion from the king's table was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the king's house with the other officers of his lord, and did go down to his own house. David was told, Uriah has not gone down to his house. So he said to Uriah, have you not come from a journey? Why then did you go down to your house? Uriah answered David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my lord Joab and my lord's servants are encamped in the open field. Can I go home to eat and to drink, sleep with my wife? As the Lord lives and as you live, I will not do such a thing. Then David said to Uriah, stay here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day. The following day, David summoned him, and he ate and drank with David, who had him drunk. But in the evening, he went out to sleep on his bed among the Lord's servants, and did not go down to his house. The next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab, which he sent by Uriah. This is what he wrote in the letter. Place Uriah up front, where the fighting is fierce. Then pull back and leave him to be struck down dead. So while Joab was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to a place where he knew the defenders were strong. When the men of the city made a sortie against Joab, some officers of David's army fell. Uriah the Hittite also got unalived. Oh no, we made some blue out here, my guy. Healthy competition is, what up, baby? Healthy is nothing, you know, no hard feelings. I ain't tripping about it. I really feel like if the House of David on, what is it, Prime, actually biblically accurate, then it would be so much better. Like, I don't want these branch off stories of what you think may have happened or what you would have liked to have happened, what you assume happened. Just stick to the Bible and it'll be just as good. Because this story right here is like a soap opera. It's absolutely crazy. Then we're going to jump down to the last two verses, verse 26 and 27. When the wife of Uriah heard that her husband was unalived, she mourned her lord. But once the mourning was over, David sent for her and brought her into his house. She became his wife and bore him a son. But in the sight of the Lord, what David had done was evil. Whew. Do y'all think it was evil, or do y'all think it was justified? We just read the story of David and Bathsheba. Was what David did justified, or was it evil, like the Lord said? We're going to jump really quickly to Proverbs chapter 4 and see what David's son has to say about situations like these. Proverbs chapter 4, verses 25 to 27. And it says, "Let your eyes look straight ahead and your gaze be focused. Survey the path for your feet and all your ways will be sure. Turn neither right nor left. Keep your foot far from evil." So very obviously, David should have kept his eyes straight. Even though, tell us about the, not in this stream, not maybe another one. So very obviously, David should have kept his eyes straight, even though he was supposed to be at war in the first place. If he wouldn't have allowed himself to watch her nude, then he very likely would not have spiraled into multiple acts of lust. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and even the pride of life, being the king, thinking he was entitled to any woman that he wanted. We must learn not to have lingering eyes when it comes to men and women, whether it's online or it's in person. So let's go now to Kings. 1 Kings chapter 11. And this is really short. It's just saying or describing how many wives and concubines King Solomon had. 1 Kings chapter 11, and we're going to read verses 1 through 3. King Solomon loved many foreign women besides the daughter of Pharaoh: Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, from nations of which the Lord has said to the Israelites, "You shall not join with them, and they shall not join with you, lest they turn your hearts to their gods." But Solomon held them close in love. He had as wives 700 princesses and 300 concubines, and they turned his heart. 700 plus 300, what's that? That's 1,000, right? 1,000 women that he had in his house that he had to take care of. I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine being responsible for that many women. It sounds like strife all through the crib. So really quickly, we're going to turn to another one of his books, Ecclesiastes chapter 2. And I'm going to read quite a bit from this one. But again, it all matters. My wife just walked in. Say hi. So Ecclesiastes, and we're going to read chapter 2, verses 1-17. And it says, remember, this is Solomon writing, again, after we see that he had 1,000 women in his house, 700 wives and 300 concubines. "I said in my heart, come now, let me try you with pleasure and the enjoyment of good things. See, this too was vanity. Of laughter I said, mad, and of mirth, what good does this do? Guided by wisdom, I probed with my mind how to beguile my senses with wine and take up foolishness, until I should understand what is good for human beings who under the heavens during the limited days of our lives. I undertook great works. I built myself houses and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks, and in them set out fruit trees of all sorts. and I constructed myself reservoirs to water a flourishing woodland. I acquired male and female slaves, and had slaves who were born in my house. I also owned vast herds of cattle and flocks of sheep, more than all who had been before me in Jerusalem. I amassed for myself silver and gold, and the treasures of kings and provinces. I provided for myself male and female singers and delights of men and women. I accumulated much more than all others before me in Jerusalem. My wisdom, too, stayed with me. Nothing that my eyes desired did I deny them, nor did I deprive myself of any joy. Rather, my heart rejoiced in the fruit of all my toil. This was my share for all my toil. But when I turned to all the works that my hands had wrought, and to the fruit of the toil for which I had toiled so much, see, all was vanity, and a chase after wind. There is no profit under the sun. What about one who succeeds a king? He can do only what has already been done. I went on to the consideration of wisdom, madness, and folly. I saw that wisdom has it over folly, as light over darkness. Wise people have eyes in their heads, but fools walk in darkness. Yet I knew that the same lot befalls both. So I said in my heart, if the fool's lot is to befall me also, why should I be wise? Where is the profit? And in my heart I decided that this too is vanity. The wise person will have no more abiding remembrance than the fool. For in days to come, both will have been forgotten. How is it that the wise person dies just like the fool? Therefore, I detested life, since for me, the work that is done under the sun is bad. For all is vanity and a chase after the wind. So some people like to go to Solomon when claiming that the Bible endorses that they can have multiple wives. But they don't continue to read through his story to understand that his unchecked desires led him to hate life. Even in Proverbs, he instructs it's best to have a singular wife with kids from her so that your finances aren't split between households. We can't give ourselves everything we desire because the most fulfilling things come directly from God. Nothing on this earth will actually satisfy us, so we must seek first the kingdom of heaven and God's righteousness, and all we need will be added unto us. So now everything else is like context and instructions, basically, advice. We're going to jump to Matthew 5:28. Matthew 5:28. And this is from Jesus's Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew 5:28 says, but I say to you, I is Jesus, everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If you look at a woman with sexual desire or a strong craving, you've already committed adultery in your heart. And it doesn't say if you are married, even if single, you've committed adultery in your heart, looking at this woman, thinking like that. And we can jump to the Old Testament where it kind of, it alludes to the same thing, and how you should conduct yourself. So Job chapter 31, verse 1 says, I made a covenant with my eyes, not gaze upon a virgin. Job, and this is after he lost all his kids, the house they were in, all of his livestock, and the field that he had, the things that he had growing in the field. He made a covenant with his eyes not to look upon a woman. Now, I'm not going to say that means he was looking on women before. He had this whole spat with God about him being righteous. Was that Derek that just liked it? Oh, you reposted it? Turn up, bro. Appreciate that. You're a real one. So Jesus tells us that we miss the mark even if we think lustfully. But the war is in our mind, so how can we actually avoid this? Demons can whisper into our minds and set off a chain of thoughts that feed our desires until we eventually fall into temptation. Therefore, we can start with our desires, fast from them, then, like Job, make a covenant with our body parts not to do whatever it is that is sin or that leads to sin. When you feel weak or overwhelmed, give in, you should. 2 Corinthians 10:5. And we're going to read that. I don't even know what it says. 2 Corinthians 10:5. You a real one. And it says, and every pretension raising itself against the knowledge of God. I should probably read 3, because that's where the sentence starts. So I'm going to go 3 through 5. Although we are in the flesh, we do not battle according to the flesh. For the weapons of our battle are not of flesh, but are enormously powerful, capable of destroying fortresses. We destroy arguments and every pretension raising itself against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to Christ. Take every thought captive. And then we're going to jump to James chapter 5, verse 16. And this is recorded, so you can always go back and look at it. Go through, write them down, all that good stuff. James chapter 5, verse 16 says, therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another, that you may be healed. The fervent prayer of a righteous person is very powerful. The community is a strong way to overcome sin cycles, because we have all been tempted by the same desires and demons. Some who have overcome and others that still struggle, but all who can sympathize. Praying and reading God's words shift your focus and thought processes to align with his will and desires. Practice makes perfect, Matthew 5:48, which says, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. So if you fall, remember that God has forgiven you and wants to help you through. And then I'm going to go to John chapter 8. And this is the story about the woman in adultery, which people like to bring up weirdly all the time, just for the one thing Jesus said, he who is without sin cast the first stone. Bring it up when it comes to judgment, saying that we shouldn't judge each other, when in Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says for us to judge righteously. But that's another conversation. So John chapter 8, verses 3 through 11. And it says, then the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and made her stand in the middle. They said to him, Jesus, teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say? They said this to test him, so that they could have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and began to write on the ground with his finger. But when they continued asking him, he straightened up and said to them, let one among you who is without sin be first to throw a stone at her. Again, bent down and wrote on the ground. And in response, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. So he was left alone with the woman before him. Then Jesus straightened up and said to her, woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you? She replied, no one, sir. Then Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore. Jesus, God in general, is a very forgiving God. And he wants to have a relationship with us and gives us many chances to clean up our act and continue to follow him. Let's go really quickly to Galatians chapter 5. And we're going to read verses 16 to 17. Galatians 5, Next page. 16 to 17. And it says, I say then, live by the Spirit, and you will certainly not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh has desires against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. These are opposed to each other, so that you may not do what it is you want to do. If we don't want to sin, like a woman caught in adultery should want not to sin, aka walk by the flesh, we must intentionally walk by the Spirit, by asking for and displaying the fruits thereof. We cannot do these things on our own, but with the power of the Holy Spirit. And what are the fruits of the Spirit, may ye ask? They are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. It's worded differently in this Bible, in ASB. I always forget that. I read it in like the KJV in this Hebrew version. So now we're gonna wrap it up by reading Romans 12:2, which I've read so many times. Y'all should know this by now. Whoever's watching should know this by now. Romans 12:2. And it says, do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and pleasing and perfect. I mean, I guess the wording makes it, it's weird. Sometimes it makes it easier to understand, and other times it's like they use these big words where they would have just simplified it. But be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Do not be conformed to the patterns of the world. And then, understanding that, let's jump to Proverbs chapter 24 really quickly to leave on a lighter note.
Which one you said?
Proverbs 24. And we're going to read verse 16 out of there. Proverbs 24:16 says, though the just fall 7 times, they rise again, but the wicked stumble from only one mishap. So do not be discouraged if you do fall. We are human, and sanctification is a process, while salvation is instant. You don't feel salvation, but you do feel sanctification because your old desires and habits are being replaced by holy ones. As long as you get back up and earnestly seek God, he will continue to draw near. And that's all I got for you today. Questions, comments, concerns, not about the Michigan-Ohio State game. We're going to have to, different live.
Ew, I heard my laugh in the background.
If y'all ain't got nothing for me, 145 likes, turn up. Appreciate y'all. And we got 2 shares, I think, from my man Supernova. All right. I will see y'all next week. Prayerfully, I'll be on time then. But you know, things happen. Adulthood. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all be safe out there.